Thank you all for joining this session on risk, resilience, and change. My name is Lonnie Kiefer. I'm co-founder of SmartCert and heading up customer success. We automate and digitize certs. And I'm going to introduce my esteemed panel, who is here to provide perspective in a number of different areas regarding these topics. Will, I'll give it over to you.
Hello, I'm Will Snyder with WTC Services. I'm a co-founder. We're 10 years in the fastener industry and focusing on security and technology for the fastener companies.
I am Carmen Vertulo with Carver Labs from San Diego. We test all kinds of fasteners and we author lots of test reports, and we're a big believer in SmartCert.
I'm Christy Rungaray. I work for NSQL Software. I've been at the company for 15 years, so very familiar with the industry over the years, and I'm the senior logistics manager there. I help implement changes in the warehouse and just overall training on the software.
So when you think about risk, resilience, and change from a perspective, Christy's going to speak about supply chain, customers, vendors. Carmen's expertise in quality and standards will also be part of the conversation, and Will's heading up network and security. I'll talk a little bit about technology. First question based on risk. What are today's greatest threats to manufacturers and distributors in the fastener industry? I will let you kick it off, Will.
So from our perspective, we feel that a lot of the fastener companies don't really realize some of the risks that they're in because it's new to the industry, it's ever changing, and the threat is that your businesses can not be operational because now you're starting to rely on technology more and more with the software and the systems that you use, and a lot of times the companies don't realize that you have to have a good security system in place to make sure that your companies are always running. If you come in and you turn on the switch in your computers or your technology doesn't work, what does that cost the company? And from a risk standpoint, that's where the owners really need to see what does it cost for my company to be down for 24 hours, 48 hours? What if we had ransomware and we couldn't get to our computers for a couple days? What does that cost the company? And then what do I need to put in place to make sure that either that risk is mitigated or what is the plan when that does happen?
Well, I think from a quality perspective, obviously, we have risks associated with our product not conforming to its requirements, but really the risk we have is not being able to prove it or prove it quickly. And for a robust manufacturer or distributor or importer who needs to deliver quality documentation with the product or before the product on time, having a system to do that eliminates that risk. And I think SmartCert is that system beyond anything else. And you have a situation often where your product is sitting on a dock or in a receiving place and a customer wants to put it in play, but they can't because they don't have the paperwork. Or it's a job site where there's an issue with a product and the job site is shut down, or a fastener installation is shut down, and being able to, without having to make a bunch of phone calls and a bunch of emails, scan that QR code on that keg and be able to show that certification to the inspector eliminates a big risk. And it's very low cost for what you get risk abatement wise, and it should be a no-brainer for most people that have to deliver product quality documentation with their product. One more thing. In the process of conducting an audit, your internal audit or even your audit for your quality management system from your registrar, nothing impresses a auditor more than a very well organized documentation control system where when you have to get your hands on something, you can get your hands on it right now. So I think, you can do more with SmartCert than just product certifications. You can file your calibration certifications. You can file your records for your QMS, your training records, your equipment maintenance records, and all that, and have them easily available from anywhere. And you don't have to essentially have a system that is custom designed. It's there and ready to go.
I think one of the risks is not implementing automation, because we see that so many places at my when we go into new accounts and things like that, is just there's no automation, and that's a huge risk with the way things are growing in this time and how companies are expanding. And I think if the last few years with COVID and everything taught us anything, is that you really need, a system where you can automate all those things, have them all together in one spot. You can access your SmartCerts or, lot documents and everything all rolled into one spot. You can capacity plan. We ran into so many people that, they would order containers, and because of all the problems with shipping and everything like that, all of a sudden they have like 3 show up, and well, how do we get this put away on time and all that? So like having those tools in your hand is just huge, and you're not relying just on like a paper system, which is what we see a lot. So
I think there's also a conversation generally around the labor shortage and the impact that's going to make on businesses, not only attracting new employees, but the institutional knowledge that's leaving. How do you eliminate risk when so much of your processes and people that are familiar with your processes are leaving? And I think where Christy mentioned automation, that's really the goal, is what can you create more efficiency around, remove a lot of those manual tasks and eliminate the risk, especially now as we're hearing the AOG techniques, issues with visibility and traceability. That really comes down to not only the powerful team, but certainly those that you can put in place, but the tools you're going to use to reduce the risk of an audit, to be able to access information quickly and easily. So when I think about risk, those are certainly top of mind from a technology perspective. From a resilience perspective, let's talk a little bit about the key strategies that industry leaders in the fastener industry are using to strengthen their business. Carmen, do you want to start that one?
Well, I think one thing for fastener suppliers is either having technology on site or have access to technology that allows you to test your product or get it tested. More and more, we're seeing end users want to see some third-party laboratory testing with their product. But also there's risks associated with that, because you've got this perfectly good product that you might send out to a lab, and hopefully that lab is going to do a good job and find nothing wrong with the product when there is nothing wrong with it. But just as there is risk in generating a conforming report on non-conforming product, there's more risk in generating a non-conforming report with conforming products. So what do you do with that now? So I think having good relationships with technical people, consultants, laboratories, and having that, understanding that technology and having some of it in your lab. If you need a lot of testing, sometimes it doesn't make sense to send it out. Set up a lab in your own shop. And that there is some technology involved with that and some expertise, but for most suppliers, it's a very doable thing.
Yeah, I think that going along with what he was just saying, that's huge. And to be able to access that information and keep it one spot, like I was kind of talking about earlier, we see so many people like holding this information in Excel documents and things like that. And it's just, you get audited and you're trying to go back through Excel files to find this stuff instead of being able to pull it right up in a system or having it, right there all together. is huge. But, and also something, what you said too about the labor force before, I was just going to touch on that too, because I think that's a huge issue right now, is trying to hold on to people. Or, you know, so many people are saying, well, we know where everything's been. Like, you know, we just know where it is, or we know this is how we do it, or things like that. And that's kind of going away. So yeah, just being able to have that all in one, you know, spot and being able to access it. And it's just easy for any employee that you have to bring into a receiving position or anywhere in the company. And it's just a easy, straightforward thing to be able to access.
So around technology, and to follow up with Christy, is there's a lot of free technology available now with things you're already using that we see companies not taking advantage of. One of them being OneDrive, SharePoint, you know, licensing that's included with your products that then allows you to store documents in one place that's secure, that isn't tied to a workstation, so that if your workstation crashes, well, that's where all my documents were. Well, we couldn't get that back, but you could have been syncing it with the cloud, and all those documents would be available to you. So those are very simple processes that are available at a very low cost. We also see, especially in the smaller fastener companies, when we go in, is like Christy was saying, there's one person in the warehouse that knows everything. Well, if that person isn't available, who knows where the inventory is, and how do you train the next person in? Because it's only his knowledge. But if you've used technology and you have your warehouses laid out and you can look at your order and know exactly which bin to go to find the product, that knowledge that was in that person's head is teachable without that person being there. And so a lot of times I think, oh, well, it's so hard to implement technology, but you're actually decreasing your risk, because your risk is that one person in the warehouse that is no longer available to you, that they hold the knowledge. And from an IT perspective, we see that a lot too. It's that's one guy that's worked with for 20 years and he knows everything about IT. Well, what happens when that guy is not there and you've relied on him to run your company? So it's really looking at a risk more holistically of individual people risk versus, you know, oh, my system's going to be down. So
when I think about resilience, a lot of what I think becomes important is communication. That may be between your customers and your suppliers, but it also is to strengthen your internal communication. So it's a bumpy road when you think about adoption of new technologies, making updates to the systems you have in place. So that level of communication from the top down becomes pretty critical for buy-in. Those are the kinds of opportunities where a simple conversation, what does it mean to the specific person that's affected? What are the benefits? Creating a strong internal team usually means that opportunity to expand the strength in the communication you have with your suppliers and customers is only going to benefit the greater good. The cloud is also something, I think, when we think about the fastener industry, Christy mentioned COVID. That's probably accelerated a lot of digital goals for a lot of companies, but it's noisy and chaotic, and you kind of don't know where to invest your time and money, which systems are really going to drive a lot of the goals you have for your business. So I think from an education perspective, it's really up to the heads of departments and teams to see what the industry is moving towards, what's being embraced, what's going to drive improvements, eliminate a lot of the mundane tasks, and continue to strengthen your business going forward when technology is really going to be the only game in town. This is my favorite topic, and it's probably because I'm a technology partner to the fastener industry, but I think we probably all have some really good discussions around the requirements for change, what that means to not only your teams, but to your relationships with customers and suppliers. Again, I think when I just wrote an article in the American Fastener Journal on this alone, because what we usually see is it's sort of that adage, let go or be dragged. You don't really want to change until you're forced to. The risk there is you're far behind the rest of the industry, and that can definitely have an impact on your ability to do business. Your competition may be jumping ahead, earning more business, your market share may go down. So from a change perspective, it does come from the inside out. Senior management champions, those conversations, as I mentioned, with your teams, empowering every single person to understand, transition isn't fun for everyone, but you'd rather be on the forefront of change than to be racing to catch up and create a lot more risks and pitfalls in your processes. From a technology perspective, I think there are, as Carmen mentioned, a lot of good partners out there that are going to meet you where you're at, certainly align with your goals, but also help drive the path that's going to be the most efficient, the most beneficial to what your business needs, and you should use them. You don't have to be the expert in all areas. Those are what your partners are for. So finding partners that have the trust and credibility in the industry, that have the tools. Maybe you're plugging into an ERP because your ERP is very far behind the industry, or you're using an ERP like in SQL, who's definitely leading the edge in automation and pulling in the tools that just make business move faster and smarter. So for me, change doesn't have to be scary. I think it's scarier the more you resist it. So find the partners that help make it easier. Christy?
I think that's a huge thing that we see too, just in implementing the software is, I think the buy-in has to come from the top, as what I've learned over the years, because if it's not there, it doesn't go as smoothly, whereas when it is coming from, the top of the chain in your business, it makes all the difference. And you can point, this is going to be our sales champion, this is going to be our purchasing champion, warehouse champion. And then you're kind of empowering your people to be like, we're going to take on this change and make things better. Yes, it's going to be hard in the beginning, but the overall, benefit of it is just going to be huge for your company. And that's exciting for me. Is something I've been able to see over the years, is just companies grow once they do make these changes, and it's an exciting thing to be a part of. So,
well, I think for a small company like Harbor Labs, growth is happening, and all of a sudden, you just can't wear as many hats as you used to, and you have to find staff who can hit the ground running. Sometimes there's just no choice, though. You have to bring them in and train them up in a hurry, and make margin for your own time as a manager or an owner to adopt these new things, because you can't change and improve during growth if there's not margin for that. If every minute of every day is taken up with something, you're going to just be the same way all the time. So and these days, finding the partners that can help you is much more affordable and accessible to a small company than it used to be. I never dreamed for example, in my little company, would be subbing out IT work, but I'm going to be subbing out IT work. You just hope you're going to have somebody in-house that can do that. Or even being able to bring on board something like SmartCert versus having your old file cabinet going on. Those kinds of things are much more accessible and affordable to very small companies. And when you're small and you're growing, you absolutely have no choice. You have to get that kind of help.
So we see a lot as a third-party vendor that comes in, but for business owners, just have somebody look. Most of the time that it doesn't cost anything to have somebody evaluate your system and give you an idea of what you're up against. A lot of times the expense to say, make sure your system is secure or use new technology is not as much as you think. There are solutions for a small business that are enterprise-like. And so the key is really looking for a third party to do that for you. And what we see is, like, from technology, you have one individual that has been with a company, like I said before, that knows everything, but the new technology is so ever changing that it's very hard for one person to keep on top of it all. So having a team that looks at security, that looks at ERPs, that looks at, network, and working together instead of one person knowing it all, helps you to be ready for the future and be in a position where you can adjust as new things come along.
Really good points. I think from a scalability perspective, everybody wants to grow their business. So what does that mean in setting the foundation now as new technologies being introduced, as there are better ways to do business to set yourself up for success? And I think there's also something to be said for the tools that are out there and the teams that are out there that are made by the industry for the industry. Will, you chose the fastener industry for better or worse, but there's a lot of amazing knowledge there then as he supports networks and systems with your competition, your partners, and certainly understands the risks and opportunities in the fastener industry. I wanted to take a second, Carmen, and talk a little bit about the new requirements that are coming faster than ever. Schedule 3B, now traceability and visibility with quality documentation, all of the sudden needing to understand exactly where your material and your parts are coming from. That's moving quickly and can certainly create a lot of challenges for your company. So maybe you can spend a few minutes talking about that, Carmen.
Well, where I see it in my consultation work is mainly around compliance issues. California Prop 65, REACH, ROHAS, PFAS, all this alphabet soup stuff. And I also see companies getting help with that, subbing that out to a professional compliance organization. My belief in the fastener industry is such that we don't need high-level help there. For the most part, we are being, for lack of a better word, abused by our customers when they throw these compliance problems over the wall that they got from someone else. They don't even analyze them. They just throw it at us and expect us to figure out what to do with it. But that is actually a one-time problem. I think as an industry, if we could come together and figure out, okay, how do we deal with PFAS? How do we deal with China ROHAS? How do we deal with REACH, which, to be honest with you, is not even a fastener-related requirement? And I get arguments from people about that all the time. And I think the goal would be for any supplier, importer, or even the OEMs, which are lazy in my opinion because they don't do their homework, establish your documentation and have it ready to use. Your policy on your website sometimes will work, statements on your purchase orders and pack slips, and God forbid anybody would do this. I think this is what we should do. Send them a bill. All right, okay, here's the price for doing business with us without your unnecessary compliance requirements, and here's the price. You might lose business over that, I don't know. But I'll tell you, you can't afford to do a compliance project on a $1,000 line item. It's just not possible, I think. So maybe for $100,000, you could spend a few $1,000s to deal with that compliance issue. But otherwise, I think there's a time, it's come time for us as an industry to do this as a team and stop everybody from, doing the same job 100 times over.
I was just going to say, I feel like what I mentioned earlier with the Excel spreadsheets, the quality control is the biggest offender of that. Just because usually when we see it, it's always outside of whatever current system is being used, and being able to automate that sort of thing. So if you do get audited, and just have it all right at your fingertips and be able to mark inventory as it comes in with those flags that he was just mentioning for ROHS, DFARS, all that, is a huge benefit overall to the company. You're not having to manually track it somewhere else. So,
From a competition perspective, you certainly want to lead the industry, your competitors, from offering trust, credibility, visibility when it comes to quality documentation. So I think that's sort of now rearing its ugly head in those in-sequel processes and in those inefficient steps that may be happening. Even just getting more control over your suppliers, creating more open communication, and retaining information that's going to be able to make your lives easier when it is required for you to demonstrate not only the traceability you have, but the smart systems that you have in place. Last question here. I'd love to hear from each of you what you think the top tools to consider in strengthening your business. What really can make an impact? What should the industry be aware of or do their homework on as far as making an impact on internal processes, strengthening for the future? Christy, you want to start?
I think the biggest thing that you can do is add automation into your warehouse. We see this all the time where you go in and the warehouse is just dealing with paper. They bring it back to the office. Everything gets processed there. You have not real-time updates on inventory and visibility on really what's going on when that happens. And being able to add a wireless management system is huge. I've been able, to see that, and when we do implement it, and just how big of a change that can be for a company overall. Not only just having those real-time updates in the system, visibility on your inventory is huge, but it flows through the whole rest of the company when you do that. It's not just about automating the warehouse. Like, your customers are getting their shipments on time and more accurately, and you don't have as many errors in shipping and different things like that, because you've added this automation and scanning into the process. And it just overall, through the whole purchasing, shipping, receiving, all of it, it just brings it all together. And it might seem like it's just one change in the warehouse, but it actually affects the whole company in a very positive way. So I would say that's really important.
Well, I'll just, in general, give some kudos to my panel mates here. You got to have a robust ERP. You got to have your IT's got to work. And when a good piece of technology comes down the pipe like SmartCert, you got to jump on the bandwagon and do it. For me personally, though, running a lab is kind of like running a restaurant. You don't. It's not like a distribution operation or manufacturing where you get an order today and ship it in a couple of weeks. Parts land on your dock, and you got to get that cooking and get that meal served up right away. They want their results, and being able to do that quickly and efficiently with some kind of a system really matters. But there also are things that hang on to that, not just the ability to produce the result, but the ability to access information. And for us, things like the IFE technology connection and online book of standards and the online browsing platform where we can access standards without having to buy them through a subscription service is absolutely key, which I also think would be key to any technology-oriented or service or, I guess, any distributor or supplier that likes to provide technical help to their customers and clients without risk. So you don't want to tell the customer something about the product. You want to give the customer the information about the product, and then they can come to their conclusions about it.
So what I would see in trying to add value to the company is sometimes the business owners don't realize how much technology actually adds to the value of your business. Having an ERP that functions well, that has wireless, that has inventory systems in place, and then having upgraded networks with security and e-commerce websites. A lot of the fastener industry is sort of shying from e-commerce websites, but think about what the next generation of people that make orders and do the business are going to want, and they want that technology, ease of use. And it actually helps the bottom line. Your EBITDA on your company and what multiples you get can be actually affected by the type of technology you have in place and how much would have to be invested from, say, another company that might be purchasing you to bring the technology up to par. And then realizing if your right security isn't in place, what's the risk of your company having a ransomware situation or your data destroyed in a way that you couldn't recover from. And I think in this era, everyone has to think a little bit different. It's not the same. It's not the same business as it was 20 years ago.
When I think about technology, I think building the kind of AI that's obviously the buzzword these days. It's not your job to figure out really where that fits into your business, but to partner with the tools and technology and systems that are integrating it on your behalf to make your companies work smarter. That doesn't mean you're eliminating team members either. It usually means you're removing the manual steps, the inefficiencies, the human element that requires a lot of time without a big payout. Keystrokes, even when you think of really providing a foundation for working smarter, it means giving your teams time back in their day to do the work that matters instead of chasing paperwork and writing in a bunch of data on a daily basis. That is, unless you guys have any other comments there, we can open it up to questions if anyone has a specific question on risk, resilience, and change in the industry. If not, I have a few teed up.
The first question is for Will, and I need to know what KISS means. The second question is for the panel. Lonnie brought up AI, and I want to hear you guys talk a little bit more about that. What does it mean for a distributor or manufacturer? Is it scary? Is it good? Is it both?
So first of all, KISS acronym for us in the event here is Keep Internal Systems Secure. So it's a play on security and risk assessment and just having a focus on network security. So we have a booth about it. I won't talk more about it now, but let me just take the AI question real quick. So really in ChatGPT, that's the new big thing, and we look at it and we look at how it can help our system, and right now it's on the outskirts of it, and there's not really any big effect other than if you're doing papers for school or you're writing documents and you're bringing information together. But what I see is it's a self-learning system. So maybe it's not really applicable right now to your business, but it's learning at exponential rates. And so to be aware of it, to be tuned into what's happening so that you're ready when all of a sudden, it has developed into something that is a challenge for your marketing or your sales teams, when all of a sudden everyone's sales information is available at just typing in a search for your specific product. So those are coming. It's not perfect now, but just realize the amount of money that's being invested and the self-learning of the systems that are being put in place, and it will be making a difference very soon.
I would have to say, in the experience that we've had integrating with AI systems and stuff, it can be scary for people, or people think their job's going to get taken away or something like that. But really, kind of like what you were just saying, it's more so not that the job's getting taken away. It's just, having to sit there and manually enter an order that came in off of a PO that you get every single week. Like, that takes a lot of time for a salesperson that's also working on other stuff at the same time. So like, one of the things that we integrate with, it actually just learns that document and then creates that order for you. So it's just adding that automation. It's really, it's huge, right? It's like that you just save somebody 30 minutes from entering that huge PO that you get from the same customer every week. So that's the...
Well, I'm old enough to remember when there was no internet. And all of a sudden, this concept called internet pops up. And what the hell is that? And it was about the same year the San Diego Convention Center opened, because I remember somebody held a seminar on the internet for $35. You could go in. There was a room this size filled with several thousand people, and 4 panelists were up there talking about the internet. One was an art dealer, one was like some medical thing, and they demonstrated what the hell the internet was. And all of a sudden it was clear. How do you have a web page? How do you get that done? How do you integrate your email with it? And I think that's probably where we are with AI. By the way, I prefer real intelligence over artificial intelligence, but just a few weeks ago, the NFDA had a Zoom panel. I can't remember what it was called, and that topic came up in our little room. And Rosa Hearn educated us about it. She talked about Chat GPT, right? And I'm thinking, crap, I have this piece of equipment right now that's regulated by the government, and I have to write a safety manual for it. Can I go to Chat GPT and say, write me a safety manual on this piece of equipment? I want it to be no more than this many paragraphs, and here's a few keywords, and see what I get? I am going to try that. And if it works, I'll be a believer. So, because as I understand it, whatever is going to scour the internet and find somebody else's manual and copy it and send it to me. So,
Bard is another good example. Not that I didn't use that to draft my questions for this or anything. AI to SmartCert, again, a technology tool supporting the industry. Our head of technology, who lives in the basement somewhere in California, gets really excited about the fact that there are new tools that make our platform smarter. So from a technology perspective, we can now read documents, even if they're somewhat greasy. We can actually pull information from a document, create searchable fields so that if you did need to refer back to that paperwork, you could essentially type in anything and avoid the perils of local drives and a lot of messy data servers. So we get excited about what that means, not only for us, but for the network. And I think it is our responsibility as technology companies to think about, and again, lead the industry in taking advantage of new tools as they're introduced. We have time for one last question. Maybe we talk a little bit about what the industry looks like in 5 years. Things are moving quickly. Again, when you think of inflation and COVID accelerating a lot of digital goals, where are you going to be left behind now if you don't keep up? What does this look like in 5 years? Will?
Well, I think I covered a lot of it, but really the use of technology is becoming less expensive, and systems are rolling together like Microsoft. You have one Microsoft license, and now you can have OneDrive and SharePoint and security and a lot of items. I think this is dying. A lot of items all under one license. And so you'll see the big companies, the Googles, the Microsofts, focusing more on what they can offer at a lower price so that everyone wants to implement or can implement at a lower buy-in. And that ties everything together because these companies are spending billions of dollars on technology, on security, and something that the small companies can't do. And so if they make that really affordable, then somebody out in Kansas in the middle of a field somewhere that can afford technology just as much as somebody in LA or New York. And so I see that really happening and really forcing companies, if you don't have technology, if you don't have security in place, that you will be left behind, that people won't know where you are, won't know your products. And so I think sort of getting on that bandwagon a little bit at a time will make a big difference for the future.
Well, I think all of that is absolutely true, but what cracks me up is I would have never in a million years thought somebody would send me a purchase order via text message. And I never really took texting very serious. I thought it was just kind of like, until one time I got my text messages deposed in a court case. So some of this technology is really good and helpful, and some things that used to be, I guess, just sort of add-ons and superficial, all of a sudden they're very critical. Texting, for example, I don't know what other versions of it there are, but it's business critical all of a sudden. We could not get by without it. If I'm on the plane, Southwest, and the freaking Southwest Wi-Fi doesn't work, that impacts me, you know? So I think some of the things that used to be sideshows are taken for granted that are becoming mainstream business critical things are the thing like Zoom, for example. Zoom was really cool when it came out, but it wasn't a critical thing. Now you can't survive without it. You cannot get by without that Zoom meeting. You can't get on a plane and go to that meeting, so we have a Zoom. So those kind of things, I think, are what we're going to see. Who knows what's next, you know? Walk into a room, there's a conference table, and you have a bunch of holograms sitting around it that are people. I don't know where we're going to go, but and I don't mind it. I think you as an old person, I kind of have to decide, okay, just deal with it, you know, and learn how to use it.
I can agree with that. I think it's inevitable in the next 5 years, you're going to have technology partners, whatever that might look like for your company. There's just no other way around it. It's funny about the text message thing. I get like support questions texted to me, things like that now. So it's true. It's just a whole different world we're living in. But, you know, it's so easy, like Will was saying, like to get it set up nowadays, it's affordable. You have options, whether you want, you know, server in-house, like as far as ERP goes, or in the cloud. Lots of people are switching to that just so, because again, the last few years, everyone works remotely a lot, or at least some of the team does, you know, and things like that. So it's just, I think it's inevitable. And I think, you know, you have to embrace that change and just move forward with it.
I think that comes full circle with the labor shortage question as well. This next generation grew up with some sort of device in their hands. And if you aren't offering the tools internally to entice them, it's likely you're not going to be able to accommodate where your business needs to go. So setting yourself up with the tools and technology to hire the people that are going to drive your business forward is certainly mission critical. I think that pretty much wraps it up. Christy, Carmen, Will, thank you for joining me in the panel discussion today, and thank you all for joining us.